Havencrest Residences, a name that dripped with prestige. It promised luxury and exclusivity. Behind its polished facade, a different story brewed. A story of hidden lives and simmering resentments. The building stood tall, a monolith of glass and steel. But within its mirrored walls, shadows danced. The whispers started subtly, like the rustle of silk against secrets. They slithered through the elegant hallways. Havencrest Residences wasn't just a building, it was a stage, and its residents the players. They were masters of appearances, these women of Havencrest. And in this theatre of whispers, no one knew the script better than Jake Malone. Eleanor Vance, the epitome of ambition. Her perfectly manicured life hid a hunger for power.
I worked hard for this. Every inch of this place is mine, bought with sweat and sacrifice.
Claire Beaumont, the picture of elegance. A renowned psychiatrist, she navigated the complexities of the human mind.
Sometimes the mind is a labyrinth. You think you know every corner, but shadows lurk where you least expect them.
Rosa Diaz, the embodiment of grace. A retired ballerina, she moved with an ethereal quality.
Every pirouette, every leap was a dance with ghosts. They never truly leave you.
These three women, so different, yet bound by an invisible thread. A thread of envy, ambition, and the dangerous allure of gossip. They were the queens of Havencrest, ruling their domain with whispers and veiled threats. And Jake Malone was about to disrupt their reign. Into this world of facades and whispers, Jake Malone blended seamlessly. He was the handyman, a silent observer to their carefully constructed lives. He was unassuming, almost invisible. He fixed leaky faucets and repaired broken light fixtures. But Jake Malone was no ordinary handyman. For Jake, Malone had come to Havencrest for one reason: revenge. The sun, a blaze of morning glory, poured through the expansive windows of Havencrest Residences. Jake Malone, a man of simple routine, began his day as always. He arrived in his nondescript van, its faded paint a testament to countless hours on the road. He entered the grand lobby, a silent phantom in work boots. He moved with an easy familiarity, his eyes scanning the room, missing nothing. He exchanged pleasantries with Mrs. Henderson, the building manager. Jake, unfazed, returned a polite nod. His first task, a leaky faucet in Eleanor Vance's penthouse apartment, a minor inconvenience for her, a strategic opportunity for him. Today he would plant the first seed of doubt, a seed that would grow into suspicion, then fear, and finally destruction. Jake thrived in the shadows, his true purpose concealed beneath a veneer of normalcy. Eleanor's apartment was a testament to her extravagant lifestyle. Jake, however, saw through the carefully constructed facade. He saw the emptiness behind the designer furniture, the loneliness echoing in the silence. He repaired the leaky faucet, his mind already several steps ahead. As he worked, he overheard a snippet of a phone conversation.
A clandestine meeting? A forbidden rendezvous?
A slow smile spread across Jake's face. He had found his leverage. He finished his work, leaving no trace of his presence except for the repaired faucet. As he left the apartment, he glanced at a framed photograph on the mantelpiece. Her husband. The game was afoot. Later that day, Jake found himself in Claire Beaumont's apartment. Her space, unlike Eleanor's cold elegance, exuded a deceptive warmth. Claire, her demeanor flustered, paced her living room.
The mind is a labyrinth. Shadows lurk where you least expect them.
Jake, sensing an opportunity, subtly steered the conversation towards her anxieties. He offered seemingly innocuous advice, planting seeds of self-doubt. Rosa Diaz, the retired ballerina, was his final target for the day. He found her in the building's meticulously maintained gardens. Surrounded by blooming roses, she seemed lost in thought. Rosa, unlike the others, didn't possess the same sharp edges. She was a fragile soul, her spirit bruised by loss and loneliness. Jake knew her story well, knew of the pain that haunted her. He approached her cautiously, engaging her in conversation about the roses. He listened patiently as she spoke of her late husband, her voice tinged with sadness. He offered words of comfort, his tone gentle and understanding. He knew how to manipulate her kindness, her trusting nature. And Rosa, in that moment, had no idea of the storm that was about to engulf her. Days turned into weeks. Jake's subtle manipulations began to take their toll.
The thrill of the forbidden had clouded my judgment.
Eleanor, consumed by her secret affair, grew reckless.
The pressure of my career, those whispers.
Claire, her anxiety spiraling, became a prisoner of her own mind.
I clung to the past, to the memory of my late husband.
Rosa, her loneliness exacerbated by Jake's carefully crafted words, retreated further into herself. She clung to the past, to the memory of her late husband, her only solace in a world that seemed determined to break her. Jake watched her descent, his heart heavy with a mixture of guilt and grim satisfaction. The women of Havencrest, oblivious to his game, danced to his tune. One evening, as the city lights twinkled outside the grand windows of Havencrest, Jake found himself alone in the building's dimly lit storage room. It was here, amidst the discarded belongings of former residents, that he felt closest to Lucy. He had transformed this forgotten space into a shrine to his sister's memory. Photographs of Lucy, her smile radiant and carefree, adorned the walls. Her artwork, vibrant and full of life, leaned against stacks of forgotten boxes. It was here, surrounded by the remnants of her existence, that Jake planned his revenge. As he turned the pages of her sketchbook, a sense of unease washed over him. As Jake's manipulations tightened their grip, the women of Havencrest grew increasingly suspicious of one another.
I was convinced that Claire was behind the rumors.
Eleanor, her carefully crafted world crumbling around her, became convinced that Claire was behind the rumors spreading through Havencrest.
I saw enemies everywhere, Rosa. She was plotting against me.
Claire, her paranoia reaching fever pitch, saw enemies everywhere.
The whispers followed me through the halls. I didn't understand why they were accusing me.
Rosa, isolated and alone, found herself at the center of a storm she didn't understand. The annual Havencrest Residence Gala was fast approaching. It was the social event of the season, a chance for the building's elite to don their finest attire and pretend, for one night at least, that their lives were as perfect as they projected them to be. But this year the air crackled with an underlying tension. The whispers had grown louder, the accusations more pointed. Jake, his heart pounding with anticipation, watched from the shadows. He had orchestrated this, his plan unfolding flawlessly. As the night wore on, the tension reached a fever pitch.
Claire, you think you can hide what you've done? Everyone knows.
Oh, don't play innocent, Eleanor. You're just as guilty.
Rosa, caught in the crossfire, watched in horror as the facade of civility crumbled around them. Mrs. Finch, a woman who knew the building's history better than anyone, sipped her tea. She watched the comings and goings of Havencrest's residents with a mixture of amusement and disdain. They thought their secrets were safe behind these walls, but Mrs. Finch had eyes and ears everywhere. She had seen Jake Malone, the new handyman, arrive weeks ago. He was an enigma, this quiet, unassuming man. Mrs. Finch, her curiosity piqued, decided to keep a watchful eye on him.
There's something about that man. I must find out more.
She noticed the way he lingered in the hallways, his gaze lingering on the residents a beat too long. He was playing a game, she realized, and the residents of Havencrest were his unwitting pawns. One afternoon, Mrs. Finch's curiosity got the better of her. The building was unusually quiet, the residents preoccupied with their own manufactured dramas. It was the perfect opportunity to do a little investigating of her own. She made her way down to the basement, her steps echoing in the silence. The storage room, usually locked, stood slightly ajar. She peered inside, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The room was a treasure trove of forgotten memories. Dusty boxes overflowed with discarded belongings, each item a whisper of a life once lived. Mrs. Finch, her fingers tingling with anticipation, began to sift through the boxes. She found old photographs, faded love letters, a child's forgotten toy. And then, tucked away in the corner of a box, she stumbled upon a leather-bound sketchbook. Its pages were filled with delicate sketches, the artist's hand capturing both beauty and a haunting sadness. On the cover, written in elegant script, was a name, Lucy Malone.
Lucy Malone. So this is the connection. What have you been hiding, Jake?
Section 3, The Unveiling.
Mrs. Finch's breath caught in her throat. She remembered Lucy Malone, a quiet, artistic soul. She had been a fleeting presence, a shadow in the hallways. Then one day, she was gone. Her absence cast a pall over the building.
Mrs. Finch flipped through the sketchbook. The drawings grew progressively darker.
And then she saw them. The faces. Eleanor Vance, her sharp features contorted in a cruel sneer. Claire Beaumont, her eyes hollow and haunted. Rosa Diaz, her delicate features twisted in despair. The same women who now resided within Havencrest.
Mrs. Finch's mind raced. She had always suspected there was more to Lucy Malone's story, and now a terrifying truth dawned on her. Jake Malone, the quiet handyman, was not who he seemed. He was Lucy's brother, and he had come to Havencrest for revenge. Section 4. The Reckoning Begins. The annual Havencrest Residence Gala was in full swing. The ballroom buzzed with forced pleasantries and thinly veiled insults. Eleanor, Claire, and Rosa, their carefully constructed facades cracking under the weight of Jake's manipulations, moved through the crowd like ghosts haunting their own lives.
Mrs. Finch, armed with the knowledge gleaned from Lucy's sketchbook, watched the scene unfold with a mixture of horror and grim satisfaction. She knew she had to act, had to expose Jake's charade before it was too late. But how?
As the night wore on, the tension in the room reached a fever pitch. Jake, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous light, made his way to the stage. He had orchestrated this moment, had manipulated these women into destroying themselves. Now it was time for the final act. He tapped on the microphone, silencing the chatter. A hush fell over the room as all eyes turned to him. He introduced himself, his voice calm and measured, as Jake Malone, Lucy's brother. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The game was up. It was... Section 1. Unveiling the Ghost. A collective gasp rippled through the opulent ballroom as Jake Malone uttered the words that shattered the illusion.
I am Lucy's brother, he declared, his voice resonating with a chilling calm. The name hung in the air, a specter at the feast. The residents of Havencrest, accustomed to whispering about others, found themselves the subject of a silence more deafening than any rumor.
Eleanor, her face ashen, gripped her champagne flute so tightly it threatened to shatter. Claire, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and recognition, took an unsteady step back, bumping into a waiter who barely suppressed an eye roll. Rosa, her frail hand flying to her chest as if to still a fluttering heart, searched the crowd for an escape that didn't exist. Jake continued, his voice gaining strength as he fed off their fear.
For years I've lived with the ghost of my sister, her laughter silenced by the cruelty bred within these walls. You whispered about her, ostracized her, drove her to a despair so profound that she saw no escape but death.
He paused, letting his words sink in, savoring the dawning realization on their faces. Their carefully crafted masks of indifference crumbled, revealing the fear that lurked beneath. The ballroom, once a symphony of chatter and clinking glasses, had fallen deathly silent. Section 1. Unveiling the Ghost. A collective gasp rippled through the opulent ballroom as Jake Malone uttered the words that shattered the illusion.
I am Lucy's brother, he declared, his voice resonating with a chilling calm. The name hung in the air, a specter at the feast. The residents of Haven Crest, accustomed to whispering about others, found themselves the subject of a silence more deafening than any rumor.
Section 2. Mirrors of Cruelty.
You think yourselves above reproach, untouchable in your ivory tower, but you are no different than those who came before you. You perpetuate the same cycle of cruelty, the same venomous gossip that poisoned my sister's life.
Look around you. Do you see them? The ghosts of your mothers, your aunts, your mentors, the ones who whispered in your ears, who taught you that kindness is weakness and that reputation is everything.
Eleanor, her carefully constructed composure crumbling, shook her head in denial. Claire, her hand trembling, fumbled for the pills she kept hidden in her purse. Rosa, her eyes welling with tears, sank back into her chair as if trying to disappear into the plush velvet.
But there was no escaping the truth. Jake had placed a mirror before them, reflecting back their own complicity in this legacy of pain. They had been so consumed by their own petty dramas, their own insatiable need for validation, that they had failed to see the damage they were inflicting.
Section 3. The stage is set with a theatrical flourish. Jake gestured towards the back of the ballroom. The curtains parted, revealing a large screen. A projector flickered to life, casting a haunting glow upon the stunned faces of the guests. On the screen, a slideshow of images began to play. Pictures of Lucy, her vibrant spirit shining through each frame, sketches from her sketchbook, capturing the beauty she saw in the world. And then the images shifted, growing darker, more disturbing. Sketches of Haven Crest residences, the building's imposing facade transformed into a prison of shadows. Faces of women, their features twisted into grotesque caricatures of envy and malice. And finally, a photograph of Lucy, her eyes filled with a pain so profound it seemed to reach out from the screen and grip the hearts of all who looked upon it. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom as the final image appeared on the screen, a handwritten note, its words scrawled in a shaky hand. It was a suicide note, Lucy's suicide note. Section 4. Whispers from the Grave.
I can't breathe.
Lucy's voice, filled with a heartbreaking fragility, echoed through the silent ballroom. Jake had found an old cassette tape, a recording of Lucy's final moments, her voice a haunting whisper from beyond the grave.
The whispers, they're everywhere. They follow me down the halls, into my apartment, into my dreams. I can't escape them. I can't.
Her voice trailed off, replaced by the sound of stifled sobs. Eleanor, Claire, and Rosa, their faces pale and drawn, sat frozen in their seats. The weight of their complicity pressed down on them, suffocating them with the realization of their own cruelty. They had been so busy whispering about others they hadn't even noticed they were playing a part in a tragedy. Jake watched their reactions, a flicker of grim satisfaction crossing his face. He had exposed their secrets, shattered their carefully constructed facades. But as he looked out at their broken expressions, a wave of emptiness washed over him. Revenge, he realized, was a dish best served cold, but it left a bitter taste in his mouth. The silence in the ballroom was deafening, broken only by the occasional stifled sob. The residents of Havencrest, once so eager to judge, now averted their gazes, masks of shame and horror. Jake's revelations ripped through their lives, exposing the ugliness beneath.
My world reduced to rubble. The whispers follow me like vengeful spirits. My affair, once a secret, now splashed across gossip columns. My husband wasted no time in filing for divorce. I am stripped of my social standing.
Claire's carefully constructed facade crumbled. The board forced her resignation. Her colleagues now whispered about her, laced with pity and disdain.
My spirit retreats further into myself. My apartment, a self-imposed prison of guilt and regret. The whispers accuse me of complicity in Lucy's death. The weight of their judgment threatens to crush me.
The police were called, their arrival a stark reminder of the real-world consequences of Jake's actions. The ballroom, once a scene of opulent celebration, was now a crime scene, its air thick with suspicion and unease. Jake watched the chaos unfold with a detached sense of irony. He had exposed the truth, but at what cost? Justice, he realized, was a fickle mistress. The investigation, hampered by the residents' reluctance, proved fruitless. There was no evidence to support Jake's claims. He had played his role too well, his presence a perfect disguise. Rosa confessed to flooding the apartment, claiming Jake made her do it, but her words were dismissed as the ramblings of a guilt-ridden woman. Jake Malone had vanished as quickly as he had appeared. Life at Havencrest residences settled into an uneasy silence. Whispers of gossip were replaced by suspicion and paranoia. Residents moved like strangers, avoiding eye contact.
From my window I sipped tea, feeling a mix of sadness and satisfaction. Jake Malone left an indelible mark on Havencrest. He exposed the darkness beneath our whispers.
Watching a moving van, she felt nothing had changed. The cycle of gossip and judgment was ingrained.
A new family moved in, naive optimism on their faces. The game was far from over.
The grand facade of Havencrest residences, once a symbol of aspiration and envy, now stood as a stark reminder of the darkness that festered beneath the surface. Jake Malone, the phantom handyman, had vanished, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and unanswered questions. Was he a righteous avenger, delivering a long overdue reckoning for his sister's tragic fate? Or was he a master manipulator, exploiting their vulnerabilities to orchestrate their downfall? The residents of Havencrest, their carefully constructed lives reduced to rubble, were left to grapple with the consequences of their own complicity. The whispers that had once fueled their petty dramas now echoed with the weight of guilt and regret. They had become so consumed by their own desires, their own insatiable hunger for status and validation, that they had failed to recognize the humanity of those around them. The cycle of gossip and judgment, of envy and ambition had left its mark on Havencrest, its corrosive touch staining the very foundation of their community. In the end, Jake Malone's greatest triumph was not the downfall of those who had wronged his sister, but rather the undeniable truth he forced them to confront. The ugliness they saw in others was but a reflection of the darkness they harbored within themselves. The whispers, once a source of power and control, now served as a constant reminder of their shared culpability. They lingered in the hallways, haunted the empty spaces, a chilling testament to the enduring power of their own cruelty. The residents of Havencrest, forever marked by the events of that fateful night, were left to navigate a world stripped bare of its illusions, the glare of the mirror revealing the true cost of their actions.